go ahead and get started. So, about 2 or 3 years ago, went to a women's basketball game, and sat through the game. Game went well, we won. But just context here, game night. Afterwards, friends and I decided we'd go get something to eat. Left the stadium, walked, got in the car. We went to a local, y'all going to have to bear with me, I'm not allowed to use restaurant names. We went to a local chicken establishment that's known to close on Sundays. And from the moment you pull in the drive, and those of you that have probably been there before, especially on bigger weekends or nights or things like that, they have people standing out there to take your order. And it was a really great experience. Our order was great. The people were personal. People were nice. And I was like, well, we just got to push this further. I would like to go get some cookies. And so there is a cookie establishment within that same shopping center. And I want to be clear that I really like this cookie establishment. If you're familiar with them, you can put an app on your phone. They will deliver them. I use them strategically. Have you ever been to lunch with that friend that just keeps talking about their diet and how you should be on their diet? Well, I like to send post-meal delivery of cookies and milk to that person just to see if they really believe in it or not when no one's around. The results are mixed, but it's hilarious. I have spent more money sending cookies to other people than I've ever spent on myself. But we go in there. If you've ever been in that restaurant, it's very utilitarian. It's very cost conscious. There's not a lot of decor. There's maybe 1-2 tables in the counter. And so we go in there, and obviously there's a little bit of a line, and there's a line at the door right behind us. And I made the comment, I was like, boy, we got here just in time. And so there's a girl working behind the counter. And she is, when I say working, I mean working. Like if there was an Olympics for running a cookie restaurant, she's running. And so the way they do it, the order comes in, they pull out a box, you make your order, they put it in, and it goes in the stack, right? So they have like a queue of that's how they're going to do the orders. And so I'm sitting here watching, and the stack is just getting bigger. And the whole time, there's this person sitting in the back in a tailgate chair. And so I'm kind of, those of you that know me, I'm very, I don't like laziness. I always, if you've got time to lean, you got time to clean, that's the way I was brought up and in my background. And so, I'm just sitting there just watching this whole time, just, is this person working the register going to explode until this person can get out of that chair? Because the stack's starting to get big. Before I even get there, and I kid you not, I'm putting these here as a reference, but it was right about here by the time I made my order. And so I get there, and I'm, of course, curious at this point, and you kind of feel sorry for this person because they're baking the cookies, taking the orders, doing the box, that whole shebang, and this person is chilling in the back on their phone. And I said, is that person going to help you or not? And she goes, they're only allowed to deliver the cookies. They're not allowed to fill the orders or do anything else. And I'm, obviously I don't own the place and there's a line. I'm not going to make a scene, but I'm sitting there going, all right. So because we're getting into what I like to call the cookie paradox at this point. The orders are coming in. This person's too busy to fill the boxes. Like the stack's just getting bigger. So we're about 45 minutes I've been in this place now because I'm not giving up. I got to see how this ends. The whole time, it took like a while, but I've got to see how this ends. I had nothing better to do. And so this guy, he comes in, and man, I'm already messing up because I didn't use my fun slides. So I was at the chicken place, and then we went to the cookie place. This guy, he comes in. He's got the full cookie uniform on, the hat, kicks in the door, kind of like the Kool-Aid man, just, oh yeah. I can't do the Kool-Aid voice. But he was like, excuse me, I got to get through the crowd. And and I'm like, thank goodness, they got her some help. We can get this thing moving because that stack's starting to get to be a building code violation. He comes in, he hits the time clock, goes through, waves at some people, says something that I can't hear, walks to the back, pulls out a tailgate chair, sits down, and starts playing on his phone. I'm not making this part up. That's why they won't let me say the cookie restaurant name. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. And so, we got out of there, but it didn't get any better before we did. It was about 45, 50 minutes before we got our order. And I got to be honest, I was kind of curious. So I went back the next day because I had to ask, what was this all about? Because I'm sorry, it was just there. And I'm like, at this point, I'm like, you teach leadership, you teach management. You can't just walk away from this one. You got to do something with it. So I did. And I go back in, and there's nobody there at this point. And it's the day manager, what have you. And I said, I explained the situation. I was like, I'm just kind of curious about that and why you do it. He goes, oh, well, we just didn't budget our people right. And I thought about it because if you know FMLA or anything like that, you know that those people sitting in their chairs were getting paid the whole time. If you're not getting in tips, the business is responsible for making sure that that person's getting minimum wage. So there were plenty of people there. I'm not going to argue with them. They're clearly a profitable business. But there was a stark contrast where we had the chicken restaurant, clearly plenty of staff and people pitching in where they needed to get the job done. And then we had this cookie restaurant that was very much, this is the way it is, you cannot deviate at all. And I was kind of in that moment kind of feeling bad because they kept referring to the person that was taking our order as the manager, but really that person could not manage anything. Like I really believe a car could have come through the front glass and this person would be like, I can't deal with this right now, I'm taking orders. I mean, it just can't. And I felt bad because this is not a people thing. I don't know that those two in the chairs were lazy, but I will tell you, I kid you not, I just didn't have enough tailgate chairs to bring with me. After I saw the two, I looked under this rack, there's like 4 more chairs under there. Like everybody has brought their own chair. This happens quite often when you bring your own chair and dedicate it to work. And this happens. And if you ever go in there, look in the back, they're underneath this little rack. I'm not kidding. And so, I just kind of walked away from it and I was like, this is 2, I assume, profitable businesses. They've been around. And I kind of waited a little time to do this because I wanted to make sure that this wasn't them going under because it'd be like really just awful if their business closed. But there's been enough time that's passed now. After 2 years, we're good. It wouldn't be for this anyways. And they did take away one of the cookies I like, just a side note. They don't have the mint chocolate cookie anymore, and I'm really upset about that, but we'll move on. Let's probably bring them down. I don't really want to make many orders anymore. So, I kind of looked at this and I was like, you have one here and you have this manager that's just really not allowed to manage. And so I really went in this and there's really only one thing you could call this. It's micromanagement. It is, whether it's by the process or by the individual, especially with excessive control or sometimes a little too much attention to detail. That is micromanagement. There can be many reasons for it. Over attention to detail, things have to be so perfect. This is the way it's got to be done, and no one can do it just like me. And it's things that the customer may not ever notice, right? Like little things. It's kind of like, a fast food restaurant. You eat the food, you don't really want to walk back there. But they operate on a certain way of doing things. Doubts about the employee's competence. Well, they just can't do the job, right? Well, that's not an excuse, that's micromanaging, right? And then finally, there's emotional insecurity. What you're thinking, we're talking about a cookie place here, who gets emotional about cookies, but I think we've all run into those people before that they're scared to let anyone learn anything because they think it diminishes their role in the organization or within society. And that's a very real threat to certain people. But these things lead to micromanagement, and in my case, waiting 45 minutes and getting a show of a lifetime for cookies. So how can we overcome these things? Well, we need to start in the right place, and that's with effective recruitment, right? Your team. Now, we inherit teams. That's going to happen. That's fine. But, attrition, people leave, people retire. We need to effectively recruit the people that we're bringing onto our team, right? This is all about building trust between the manager and the subordinates. And so don't rush with your selection of a candidate, right? Don't ever feel pressured just to fill a position, right? Especially within the university setting or something like that. If you pick wrong, sometimes it's a little difficult to get rid of that problem. And so you have to be very careful in what you do there. What is the quality of your candidates, of your candidate pool? Sometimes it's fine to say, hey, none of these people match. I know of a mechanic shop that has desperately been looking for mechanics, and their applicant pool was basically folks that had worked at McDonald's. And I believe in people personally growing and learning things and growing, but do you really want the person who works on your car to have learned how to put brakes on by doing it on your car? No, you want to stop. And so, what is the quality of your candidates there? Conduct interviews. When you're interviewing people, let's make sure we're putting apples to apples. What is their work history? Where did they work? And more importantly, what exactly did they do there? If you have on there, I worked at a hospital, that doesn't necessarily mean you were a neurosurgeon, right? We have to dig into this, and there's nothing wrong with it as long as we're treating everybody the same and we're basically asking the same questions, but we really want to get into this person's background. Remember, we didn't go to them, they came to us. They wanted this job, right? There's nothing wrong with asking questions. What type of work did you do? Can you work with this person? If everything on paper is great, but just personalities-wise, you don't think they're going to meet well with you or your team, it doesn't matter how qualified they are, you're not going to get a lot of work done, are you? So we have to look at how they're going to work for the team. And recommendations. Recommendations can be a double-edged sword. Sometimes you get really good recommendations because that person is great and whoever they're working for, really likes to see their people succeed. Sometimes you might be inheriting someone's problem. This person's great. You just turn around. You find out after the fact that guy was laughing all the way. So, but the point is, ask specific questions to the folks that you're getting recommendations from. If you get a letter of support, there's nothing wrong with contacting that person and asking them specific questions about what that person did and how it related to the organization. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Being picky is fine. Now, we don't want to get into violating federal laws or anything like that, but being picky for your team is important as a manager because you're trying to get it right on the front end and not having to deal with these things on the back end. Define goals and expectations. So every year at this university, you have the opportunity to define goals and expectations. Does anybody want to say what that process is? Annual evaluations, right? Every year you get that chance to start all over again with someone. When we're talking about goals, though, are they clearly explained or are we being vague with someone, right? How do you hold someone accountable if you're vague about what you're trying to get from them? We have to be clear in what it is that we're asking for. What are we working for? Do people on your team actually understand what it is that you're doing? Sometimes it's better to educate people about why we're trying to do something instead of what they're supposed to be doing. And that way, when problems happen, they can adjust because they're making that move for the betterment of the organization. What is our timeline? Are we clear about that timeline? And we're not just going to say, I need this done and here's the end date. Let's come up with times that are, for instance, a 6-month project. 1 week, getting started, 1 month, 3 months, and then 6 months. Where are we? And that way, one, the subordinate knows that you're following up on them, which motivates them to keep going. But two, you find about problems long before they get to be a huge issue, right? Would you rather know there's a problem early on or at the end when you didn't meet your deadline? Are there benchmarks, at these particular dates? Do we have the things that we need at that point? Have we hit these little parts of the project that need to be done by now to hit that end goal? If not, why not? It's not necessarily always a problem with a person. It could be a problem with resources. It could be that the project maybe does not fit the timeline we're trying to shove it into. Sometimes it takes, especially if you're working with outside partners, you have to wait on things to come back from them. And if there's a delay there, you as the manager need to be able to adjust these things. But without having these timelines and benchmarks, you don't really know there's a problem until there's a big problem, right? Constantly evaluate progress and practice accountability with your people, right? Hold people accountable, not because you're trying to be authoritative with them, but because you're trying to keep the organization intact. You're trying to keep your organization moving and looking well with the people that you work with and the people that you work underneath. And if we're not holding people accountable on the smaller issues, it's going to be much more difficult when there's a larger issue. And honestly, if you hold people accountable on the smaller issues, a lot of times there aren't larger issues because we don't get to that point to begin with. Constantly evaluating, again, where can we make improvements? Get feedback from your staff as well. It's not always sitting on top of the tower looking down. Get feedback. Delegation, I think, is one of the things that people have the most difficult understanding of doing. You know, we say we delegated, but that's not necessarily giving tasks that you don't want to do to someone else. Delegating is taking something that you actually care about and trusting someone to at least get part of it done without standing over their shoulder, right? People are going to make mistakes. People that work underneath you will make mistakes. Everybody say that out loud. People that work underneath you will make mistakes. Everyone sitting in this room has made a mistake at some point. If you have not, and you would like to come up here and look everybody in the eye and say, I've never made a mistake, please feel free to come on down. That's what I thought. But we have to give that room to people to make mistakes. People learn from their mistakes. Now, do we necessarily want to give them something that derails the whole project? Absolutely not. But we need to give people room to make mistakes. And when we're not delegating, that learning never happens. You can tell somebody something 100 times, but until they've experienced it themselves, they never learn from it. When you delegate, that gives you a little more time to lead and evaluate, right? To step back and look at the organization as a whole instead of the process in its individual capacity. And I think a lot of times people don't appreciate that part of it. When you are delegating, that gives you more time of the day. Everybody's busy at this university, hopefully. We don't hire anybody that should have like lots of days off or things like that. Like everybody should be busy. And so we're trying to give you as the manager time to lead and evaluate by delegating out. You can kind of look, and I mean, if you're working with multiple people, delegate multiple parts, right? We're still getting feedback. We set timelines, benchmarks, things like that. We can give them a little bit of rope, see how things work out, and then if we need to pull back and start again, we've got time to let things happen. But we've got to delegate these things out, or these people never learn, and honestly, you as a manager never get time to manage because simply you're doing all the work yourself. Again, individual development, and it creates buy-in from the team, right? I have a piece of this, like my personal thing as your employee, I did this, I can look at it, this is an achievement for me. If no one ever has any kind of achievement in a project, how much of it do you think they actually believe in it? It's just another task till 5 o'clock, go home, rinse, repeat, come back again. So we really need that buy-in from our subordinates. And it reduces the individual workload on somebody. I know everyone probably has that star employee in their office that you can go to them and ask them to do anything. And not only does it get done, it comes back and there's even more than you asked for, right? But are you burning that person out? Have you ever thought of it from that side of it? You know, you're getting what you need, but are you burning that person at both ends in the process of doing it? And when we're delegating this thing fairly amongst your staff, we're lightening that workload. And I'm going to tell you a lot of times too, when people go and transition into delegating more, that person that was doing a lot sometimes feels like they're not as valued anymore. And it's okay to go to them and say, look, I had to do this because I was going to burn you out. Like you are fantastic at what you do. There's no doubt in my mind that you could do all of this with your eyes closed, but I'm not going to burn you out on this. You deserve to just do this part and other people will grow along with it. But if you have any input, please come back to me and let me know. But we don't necessarily want to burn people out. Be hands-on, right? There's a difference in micromanaging and being hands-on. Everybody ever had that boss that says, if you need me, my door's always open, and they close the door right behind you? By the laughter, it happens quite often. You know, it inspires confidence with your staff. It's not necessarily something that's beneath you, right? They say, hey, you know, this must be really important. The boss is out there. They're giving me a hand with this. You know, it provides learning opportunities both ways. That individual learns from you. They say, hey, you know, I never thought about doing it this way. It provides you a learning opportunity because I don't know if you're like me, you know, technologies change, processes change, and as you move up the chain, there's not really a good way to keep up with those things anymore. And so when someone comes to you with a problem, if you've been hands-on to a certain extent, you can kind of understand what they're talking about. If someone comes to you and you're like, no, it's 15 years ago, we did it this way. and it was always fine. And it's some software now that doesn't even exist anymore. It's a lot more difficult, and they're not going to want to come to you with problems if you're shooting them down, because quite honestly, they're going to go back and say, hey, you don't understand what I do here. And so being hands-on is great, but do the work with them, not for them. That's the problem that we run into the most here, I think, is that when we tell people to be hands-on, they just take on projects, they take on the work, and they push out the individual that they were trying to coach. And that's what we need to get away from. Make time for your team. If you take nothing away from today, make time for your team. Group and individual feedback meetings, right? Sometimes you may have people that aren't willing to share with the group something that they may be willing to share individually. This can be kind of tough? Sure, especially if you got an office of 15, 20, 30 people, but you still need to make the time. That's just part of it. Provide feedback to that person if they give you a suggestion. Hey, this is great, or if it's like throwing water balloons off the roof for some reason, don't necessarily say that's awful, we'll never do that, but at least, I tell you what, go back to your office and put in writing 5 points as to how this is going to benefit our department, and at least give them some kind of feedback. But if you're always shooting someone down, you really end up kind of crushing their spirit, and they're not going to bring you the ideas that you really need. Be flexible. Some of you that may have people that work earlier shifts and later shifts, you can't just say, well, our meeting's going to be at 1 o'clock here. Even though you're asleep in the bed, too bad, you've got to be here. Make time. If you got to split those meetings up, what have you, make it work. Everybody on your team should feel is equally valued with their time as well. Adjust as needed. If you've got events going on, if your offices are seasonal, and you have certain workloads that may be tougher, maybe that's not the best time just to have a meeting because we do it on the third whatever of the month. Adjust your schedule. Make sure that you're not interfering in the work of those that you're trying to coach. Does anybody have any questions? Nothing. This one was short and sweet. All right. Well, thank you for coming over here.